For those people who say that Rojava is not an anarchist society, despite the fact it is the biggest revolution, at least for the anarchists, since the 1930s in revolutionary Spain by the CNT-FII, it is, without a reasonable doubt, anarchists. They are non-hierarchical, which is the basic foundation. They are against hierarchy itself, nation states. They organize themselves in a decentralized, horizontal, even pluralistic level based on the federalism and confederalism. This is a developed called democratic confederalism, which is based on the ideas of Murat Bookchin, to be more specific, communalism and libertarian municipalism based on dual power structures. And the very few things that has some level of hierarchy, still the people are in charge. It is still bottom up, not top down. I will put links in the description about how they organize themselves, and again, it's purely under anarchist communist principles. Now, there are other critiques. People say that Rojava is not anarchist or fail to do anarchist. Usually people who never read the constitution of the Rojava contour. They are very explicit. They are very against the concept of nation states and private property. Even David Graeber has admitted that despite the certain problems they may have contained, it is still, without reasonable doubt, an anarchist revolution. And we can even look into economic structure, which is when people talk about socialism or communism, especially the Marxists, we usually talk about from an economic perspective. So, I show you two articles. One that is more for the public audience and the other of an academic peer review. Let's start with the more popular one by Janet Bell for the Institute of Social Ecology in the article Poor in Means but Rich in Spirit. After my visit to Rojava in December 2014, Janet, you just returned from a journey to Rojava that lasts more than a week. How did you and the group enter Rojava? The Turkish borders is closed and ISIS control much of the territory in Iraq. They started in Iraq and crossed the border in Samarkand. The organized had arranged for a crossing in advance. Once we arrived, we had to wait a few hours till someone made a telephone call. Rojava's system is similar to Murat Bookchin's idea that the most crucial way power flows from the bottom up. Based on Bookchin's system is the citizens' assembly. Based off Rojava is the commune. One of my questions before arriving was whether Rojava's commune were sample of all citizens or were many other delegates or represented in a council. But I found out that the communes are made up of a neighborhood's households and that anyone from those households may attend and participate in the meeting that is assembled. Another similarity that both system power flows upwards for various levels. Citizen assemblies can exist in isolation. They had to have a mechanism by which they interconnect with their peers, yet one that remains democratic. Rojava's solution for the People's Council system is it derives through several tiers: the neighborhood, the district, the city, and the canton. Bookchin, by contrast, spoke of towns and neighborhood confederating. Murat called the broader levels confederate councils, whereas in Rojava there are called people's councils at every level, and even the House of the People. In both cases, they are made up of mandate delegates, not representative as a legislator. Rojava's delegates call president convey the wishes of the people at the next level up. They don't act on their own initiative, so that's another similarity. In Rojava, the People's Council are not made up only of co-president from the lowest level. They also comprise people elected and they enter at the level. The council seems to be quite large, and I think that's a good thing. In addition to the council system, Rojava had transitional government in place as well. It built in dual power. The council system is separate from it, but it carries the wishes of the people into it for various mechanisms. The people pay no taxes, and slavery and wage are practically not existed, with the rare exception of raw mineral work because of the embargo by Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Syria, even the United States. But at the end of the day, they believe that the property, the common economy, and factory should be community owned. Now we're going to the more peer-reviewed economic publishing about the economic system of Java, written by Knapp. Resource and Rojava Revolution in West Kurdistan, also known as Syria. The Rojava Revolution is taking place in 3 cantons in northern Syria that are part of the area known as Kurdistan, stretching through Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. In 2012, a revolution occurred in Syria cantons in an area of 18,300 square kilometers. The population of Rojava is estimated in 2014 as 4.6 million. Obviously, the ongoing war region makes precise estimate difficult. The Rojava Revolution is taking place in three cantons in Northern Syria that are part of the area known as Kurdistan. The heroic defense of Kobani against ISIS brought the attention of many of us of the experimental democratic autonomy said to be running in the region some extent in northern Kurdistan. It's a controversial topic not least because its ideological roots are in charge in strategy. Abdullah Ocalan, the leader of the PKK, started to promote from his Turkish prison cell. This led to significant change in North Kurdistan from the mid-2000s as new structures were created, and a way of state repression was directed at those structures which had been seen over 8,000 prisoners since imprisoned by the people. The goal was to be develop a democratic, ecological, gender-liberated society in the shadow of the assisted society through cooperation between political parties taking power at the election and parallel system to neighborhood council which will really be making the decision. All this is part of the overall body called the Democratic Society Congress, bringing together political parties, council, and civil societies. Mass arrest and repression imposed obvious limits on the experiment of the Kurdish area Kurdish state, but events in Syria allowed the possibility for a much more thorough experiment. Since the writing of this got over 10% of the vote in Turkey, which many open up from more spaces in the regard. Geographic ethnic makeup and other reasons meant the three Kurdish cantons of northern Syria collectively turned Rojava so little fighting initially. So from 2012, a construction project to begin one that could continue until the moment ISIS found itself with a large supply of heavy weapons and armor captured after Mosul after the Iraqi army fled. This enabled them to rapidly overrun the YMG and the YPG, and the defense forces that had previously failed to achieve significant breakthrough with the sort of the central canton around Kobani. The overall, but Kobani itself very rapidly indeed. The Kurdish anarchist Saheb Bahed, who has visited Rojava, says of the revolution, and I quote, "In the Syrian Kurdistan, the people were prepared to know what they wanted. They believed that the revolution must start from the bottom of the society, not from the top. It must be social, cultural, and educational, as well as political revolution. It must be against the state, power, and authority. It must be people in the communities who have final decision-making responsibilities. These are the four principles of the movement of democratic society, or DEF-TEM. Credit needs to be given to whoever is behind these great ideas and the effort behind them into practice, whether it's Abdullah Ocalan and his comrades or anybody else." This is no case to sit back to wait to see what happened, who is right, but rather critically engage in what does appear to be a very real significant social experiment despite the issues already outlined. The experiment confined in its goal, like libertarian municipalism, is not anti-capitalist in a revolutionary sense. The radical aspect, as with the Zapatistas, is the creation of organs of direct democracy rather than the seizure of workplace, although the Zapatista rebellion did involve the seizure of large extensive fincas. As with the ECLM, the question remains the relationship of political military organization and the organs of direct democracy, in particular how difference between these two are resolved. The piece can be audio, video, book, online article, etc. So, be a Zapatista, whoever you are, hence although I say what is happening is enormously important primary focus. The Rojava Revolution between a rock and a hard place. The page maintains overview of the situation lessons from the anarchist perspective. An anarchist eyewitness of the self-management in Kurdish Syria read a few months before ISIS so attracted attention to this report from the Kurdish anarchists as a great introduction to the region. I'm gonna put links in the description, by the way. In Rojava reality, time of theory is over, now it's time of action, and I quote, "I've been in Rojava since half a year working in various areas of society, which giving me the unique opportunity to get a good overview of the system in action. My libertarian philosophy and practical experience puts me very close to the revolutionaries of Rojava, and they like to hear my ideas or criticism. This piece is useful as the first-hand description of the limits of the revolution and indirectly highlights the contradiction dependent on the very politicized country. Some concrete example how the Rojava Revolution is anti-capitalist. David Graeber, the anthropologist, came back from the observation mission from Anglo-American delegation to the Rojava. When challenged about why he considered anti-capitalist, he offered his very useful quick summaries. And Jill Bell described Rojava Revolution decision-making movement, the economy. I must read a piece filled that is not out of detail. Bill visited in late 2014 a huge amount of eyewitness details. Study for the moment of coercion, Sicily Canto, Rojava, a revolution in daily life. While that is taking place, it's not communization, it's real movement against state plunder, coercion, fighting militarily on its borders, and inwardly for the future of power within them. The limits of the struggles in Rojava and the sense of those who struggle everywhere, the relationship between labor power and capital has become a matter of repression. How the Rojava Revolution became a translation of account from 2012. This is the people in the city of Kobani are selling into malls of participating peoples assembling there. They reached a decision. The revolution must proceed. The Armed Defenses Committee, which will become part of People's Protection Units or the YPJ, take control of the main access road to and from Konabe, while citizens in an organized action lay siege to regime institutions, assaults army military strongpoints. Are short negotiations in order to convince those in charge of the barrack they have nothing left to lay down their arms. In joint statement of the Academy delegation to Rojava, they say we believe that the generally democratic structure had indeed been established. Not only is the system of government accountable to the people, but also spring out a new structure to make direct democracy possible. Popular assembly and democratic councils. Women participate on equal footing with men at every level. And there's also a powerful documentary about this topic of units of the YGJ between 16-year-olds through their basic training, and with her war, women versus ISIS. Again, an impression of Rojava from a Janet player who had on a 2014 trip, that, and I quote in her quote, the Rojava Revolution is fundamentally a women's revolution. And also they kick out ISIS, so, good news. And also, Quasiro has, in the Rojava communes, the council has 6 different districts. Each district had 18 communes, and each commune is made up of 300 people. Now, each commune has 2 identical presidents. Citizen council considers 12 cities, delegates the county level, and people's council are located according to the population. In the BBC documentary, they also made a good video about it, especially around the Belgrade city of Kobani. How long can this idealistic social experiment last, at least from the capitalist, BBC perspective. One of the common critique against Rojava being an anarchist society, that they insist to be a real revolution, the wage system market had to be abolished and full communism introduced. Although now all versions are anarchist, you had to do that. Anarcho-communism, yes, but not all schools are anarchist, like the mutualists and collectivists, which they allow some form of wage and even market. The point being, it's not enough that it's goal to keep work towards, it must already happen. Advocates of positions set to see gender liberation as irrelevant distractions by these people who claim that Rojava is not an anarchist society, and more than a nice add-on for a quote-unquote real revolution. And their productivist bias means that environmental concerns are no more than a tool to control capitalism. The point to start with is to understand you can't simply abolish wages. You have to instead remove the need for wages. Otherwise, you just end up with secondary underground market where the real economy activity goes on. Historically, even draconian states such as under Lenin and Stalin have proved unable to abolish such activity despite jailings and executions. We can see either that the abolition of wage labor has happened or that is the goal. Briefly, no, but let's continue. The economic model being pursued is complicated by the deliberate underdevelopment of the region under Assad, which means there had not even any cement factories or grain mills, the main product cash economy produced apart from oil being wheat. This means that there isn't much of a classical working class in the old school Marxist factory sense, or in the factorized to seize. The economy is a mix of agriculture, small machine shops, and oil extractions, along with the state-run electricity, phones, and other services. This mix sort of bugs taking. Such critiques suggest a poor fit to actual conditions, not an impossibility, but the same force for collectivization does exist as a factory setting, so it requires deep mass ideological commitment. As indeed was presented some villages in rural Spain during the revolution, where there were both wage and individual ownership were abolished. If you've seen the film Land Freedom, you are familiar with how that happened in some places. So far as I understand, economic change in Rojava is happening at the level of 1. Setting up cooperatives, which agriculture one uses land abandonment by the Assad regime. 2. Providing certain necessities free, for partial filling of the requirement for wage abolition, but from the point of view of consumption rather than production. free a certain amount of war communism, again from a form of wage abolition but not necessarily intended to be long term. In Kobani, on the seafood was reported by BBC journalists as being freely available to all. If I seem referred to some co-ops operating in according to the needs basis, this appears to translate in reality into a family wage, again similar to the anarchist revolution in Spain. So the take-home wage is proportional to the number of people dependent on the wage. If this is widespread, it is indeed a significant step towards a real abolition of wages in Rojava. How real this is and where it will develop to is the question that is currently being unanswered by the time this was written back in 2014. And you can get all the information on this page. And we see is a stateless government based off radical democracy and decentralization. By the book Strangers in the Tangled Wilderness, a small key can open a large door. And I quote, "How do you base a government on anarchism? Rojava is not the first and hopefully won't the last. Despite some similarity with these similar experiments in the past, like revolutionary Spain, the Zapatista, the Argentina neighborhood assembly movement back in 2001-2003, and Morai's Bookchin communalism and libertarian municipalism, what is being implemented in war-torn Rojava is unique and extremely ambitious. At the core of this social experiment are the variety of local councils, the encouraged maximum participation by the people of Rojava. The Kurdish people had a long history of local assembly based on tribal and familial allegiances. The semi-formal assembly have been important practice of social organization for Kurds for hundreds of years, so it's not surprising that the face-to-face assemblies soon become the backbone of their new government. The neighborhood assembly make up the largest number of councils. Every person, including teenagers, can participate in the assembly near where they live. In addition to these neighborhood assemblies, there are councils based on workplace, civil organization, religious organization, political parties, and other affinity-based councils and youth. People often are part of the number of local councils depending on their life circumstances. These councils can be as small as a couple of thousand people or they can have hundreds of participants, but regardless of size, they operate similarly. The councils work on direct democracy model, meaning that anyone in the council may speak, suggest topics to be decided about, and vote on proposals. Although many councils use consensus for their decision making, it is unclear how membership is determined in these councils, but we know that the opposite movement council prior to 2012 had no mixed membership. Anyone showing up assembly could participate. It is also unclear how these councils meet and who determines when they meet. It's known that the neighborhood assembly in the Effin canton meet weekly. It does one in the hospital workers council. These local councils make up the invisible unit of Rojava democracy. The larger parties like the Supreme Council of the Rojava Canton are populated with representatives from these local councils. All decisions from these upper councils must be firmly adopted by the local council to the binding to their constituents. This is very different from the federalist tradition of nation states, which the federation supersedes local control. In August 2014, for example, original council decided that local security forces could carry weapons while patrolling a city, but free local assemblies did not approve of this decision, so in those local assembly areas, security must refrain from carrying weapons. The role of the upper councils is currently limited to coordinating between the myriad of local councils. All the power is still held locally. Representatives to the upper councils rotate frequently with the maximum terms set up by the upper council, but the local councils often create their own guidelines for more frequent rotations of their representatives. The goal of the Rojava Council system is to maximize local power and decentralize non-hierarchical, while achieving a certain necessary degree of regional coordination and information sharing. The remaining government above the upper council level seems familiar to the council parliamentary system, with rotating representatives and executive branch composed of the canton co-presidents and an independent judiciary. All government power mandate from the councils, and the councils retain local autonomy, thus forming a confederation. The confederation is made up of three autonomous cantons that have their own ministries and militias. There is no federal government in the Rojava canton system. Voluntary association, mutual aid are key concepts of the confederation, as these ideas protect local autonomy. Voluntary association leads to radical decentralization, several limiting any organization structure above the primary decision makers of the local councils. All bodies above a local council must have proportional representative of the ethnic communities in the canton and at least 40% gender balance. This includes all ministry, regardless of race or ethnicity. It doesn't matter if you're Turkish or Kurdish or Syrian or Arabic or Jewish, it doesn't matter. Most ministries had co-ministers with one male and one female minister. With the exception of the women's minister, most decisions by the Supreme Court need to support 2/3 of the delegates from the upper councils. Any canton retains autonomy but the Supreme Council decision and may override them by their own People's Assembly, the largest upper council in any region, while still being part of the Confederation. This bottom-up decentralization seeks to preserve the maximum level of autonomy for local people while encouraging maximum political participation. Both internal and external security for the canton is managed by each canton's People's Assembly. The local security, which are equivalent to police, are called asashi, or security encouraged. This is what the common misconception when people say Rojava is not anarchist because they have a police, despite not understanding the contents how it is organized. The asashi are elected by local councils and serve a specific term determined by the local council and the canton's People's Assemblies. The Ashisha also had their own assembly, but not one that can send representatives to the People's Assembly, in which they elect officers and make their other decisions. In addition to the Asashis, there are People's Self-Defense Militia to provide security from outside threats, like terrorists, Islamic terrorist groups, and the military of Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. These militias elect their own officers who are directly responsible to the canton's People's Assembly, just like revolutionary Spain did. Both the Asashi and the People's Self-Defense Militia had two organizations, one a female-only group and the other co-ed. Militias that provide mutual aid in another canton. Asashi are the most part forbidden to work in other cantons. Most follow the canton's People's Assembly but can retain their own commanders and units. In times of peace, the canton do not maintain standing militia services. The Rojava's relationship with the Syrian state is yet to be tested. The Rojava Canton Confederation is not set up as a state. It's drawn instead of the idea of dual power, an idea first outlined by the French anarchist Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. The KCC described the dual power as a strategy of achieving a libertarian socialist economy and political and social autonomy by means of incrementally establishing and then networking institutions of direct participatory democracy to contest the existing authority of state capitalism. Rojava currently set off a path, a coded system with whatever state arises from the Syrian civil war and to the current alignment of neighboring states, namely Turkey, Iraq, and Iran, that encompass Kurdistan. People in Rojava will retain their Syrian citizenship and participate in the Syrian state so long it doesn't directly contradict the Rojavan principle. This uneasy coexistence is the reason that the canton has explicit forbidden national flags, not create a new currency, a foreign minister, or a national passport or identity paper, why they do not have a standing army. It is unclear if the people of Rojava plan to maintain this relationship with the state or what will happen if the conflictual situation. Rojava is neither state nor a pure anarchist society if we judge it purely from theory of anarcho-communism. It's an ambitious social experiment that rejects the seduction of state power and nationalism and instead embrace autonomy, direct democracy, and decentralization to create a freer society for the people of Rojava, which is still in the end of the day anarchist principle. It is an anarchist society, but not in the purest state of form, for example, what Peter Kropotkin laid out in The Conquest of Bread. But god damn, it's close enough. It's so close. The Rojava principle had borrowed from anarchism, social ecology, and feminism in attempt to chart a societal vision that emphasizes accountability and independence for the radical pluralistic community. It is unclear this experiment moved towards a greater decentralization of the kind the Murai Bookchin has suggested and the Zapatistas had implemented, although because this is based on an outdated article, they already achieved that. What is happening right now is a historic departure from the traditional national liberation struggle and should be a great interest to anti-authoritarians everywhere in the world. The economy they have is called the people's economy, to differentiate from traditional market and state socialist economies, but though it positions itself as alternative to the dualism of capitalism and communism, it's not fully formed model as of yet by the time this was written, but now they're going more toward the anarcho-communist situation. There are three major concepts of the people's economy: commons, private property based on use, and worker administrative businesses. The economy experiments less as an implementation of a single concept than a joint rigged system that must respond to the needs of a war and crippling economic embargo. In 2010, the year before the Arab Spring exploded in Syria, the Rojava region provided over 40% of the country's GNP and 70% of its export, despite only about 17% of the population living in the region. Yet people of Rojava remain well below the median income of the country. Rojava region sits on the famous Mesopotamia plain between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers and is the coldest agricultural center in the world. Until 2011, it exports grains, condense, and meat to its neighbors, and Europe was the country's largest producer of oil. Planted the water for the richest tribes allowed for the cement factory and other medium industrial plants to build on the areas in the 1970s and 1980s. However, since the start of the Civil War, the infrastructure required to support these economic activities has been falling apart. Power communications, roads, and railway have all been serious compromise, failed infrastructure, constant war, and strictly enforced embargo, most notably by Turkey, which shares Rojava's only stable border, have ruined the traditional economy of the area. So they called for a socio-economic plan which will be renamed the People's Economic Plan, based on the writings of Abdullah Ocalan and the life experience of southern Turkey, also known as North Kurdistan. The traditional quote-unquote private property was abolished late 2012, meaning all buildings, land, and infrastructure fell under the control of the various city councils. This did not mean people no longer owned their homes or businesses, because when people had no understanding what communism or anarchism means, it's like, oh, they're gonna take your toothbrush. They confuse private property with personal property. However, the councils implement an ownership by use, just like what revolutionary Spain did. Sovereign principles and principles that could not be overturned by any council. Ownership by the use that when building like a home or a business being used by a person or persons, the use will in fact own the land and structure but will not be able to sell them on an open market. They wrote that the use of ownership is what prevents speculation and capital accumulation, which in turn leads to exploitation. Aside from property owned by use, in principle, any other property will become commons. This abolition of private property did not extend to commodities like automobiles or machines or electronics, for example, that was limited to land, infrastructure, structures, based, the things that maintain the society. The common encompasses land, infrastructure building not owned by individuals but held by stewardship by the councils. Councils can turn over these public goods into individuals to be used. Commons are considered as a way to provide both safety net for those without resources and a way to maximize use of material resources of the community. Commons also include ecological aspects of the region, including water, parks, wildlife, and wilderness, and even most livestock. According to Dr. Ahmad Joseph, an economy co-minister, 3/4 of the traditional private property is being used as a common, and 1/4 is still being used by individuals. The economy plan posits that the commons are robust enough to economically there are still no need for taxes. Since the beginning of the revolution, there has been no taxes of any type. Workers' administration is the third leg of the stool of the economy plan. The workers are to control the means of production. They to control the means of production and their workplace through workers' councils. They are responsible for the local councils. According to the Ministry of Economy's worker counter had only been set up for about 1/3 of the enterprise in Rojava by the time this was written. Workers' councils are coordinated by various economy ministers and local counters to ensure small flow of goods, supplies, and other essentials. It also called for all economic activity in the cantons to be ecologically sound. It is unclear how has responsibility for this, whether it's the workers' council, the local council, the city council, or the people assembly, or basically all of them. For the various statements of the economic ministry, one sees mentioned over and over again about the primacy of ecological sensibility. It also varies when it comes to relationship with the economic inside and outside of Syria. A substantial amount of the current economic activity in the region from the black market oil being sold outside the region. In 2014, representatives of Rojava traveled around Europe looking to create trade partners, seemed to be suggesting a standard free market policy, while at the same time eliminating banks and other financial institutions inside Rojava. It's something similar to the Zapatista, where they can sell their coffee outside while still maintaining their anarchist principles within their territories. The Rojava counterparts also clearly state that the region will not produce its own money or bonds, so it's unclear how such relation or the government's actually started. Regardless of the fact that the Canton principle, their commitment to anarcho-communism because of the They want to abolish private property. They don't want to produce money, so it's a stateless, moneyless society. The strength seems to be how he humanized economics for local people. He achieved this by having commons available to the community to provide those in need and create small-scale limited ownership to promote and meet local needs and markets. Workers' administration create expand participants in local economy and makes the economy more accountable to those directly affected by it. The seek to create self-sufficient that is aligned with ecological stewardship that actually puts people and the planet before profit. It creates a localized participatory economy and a localized participatory government. In an interview first appeared in Rojava's economy model is a communal model by First News Agency in April 2014. A report instituted into introduction in tag, and I'm going to read. A new interview says Professor Ayhan Yusuf, who was made president of the Committee on Economy and Training of the Free Autonomous Canton following his proclamation of autonomy this past January, spoke about the prevailing economic model in the world and attempt in Rojava to build an alternative economy around social communal model as laid out of Abdullah Ocalan, which is based on the ideas of moral budget. So, Mr. Ocalan's economic perspective thus provides not a third course, nor do I think that will have much to do with politics. We can see this when we look them together with the thinking which emerged in the West occurs in historical economic development, where we understand Ocalan's thinking fits in, if we see the understanding of it. This set a course of the people's leader Abdullah emerged in the 1990s after its collapse of the Soviet Union. Its strength went forward. For that reason, I don't think calling a third course quite fits. In fact, some attempt to identify the third course as collapsed and disappeared in the West. It became laid to general terms after 1999. Details became clearer after 2007 because these years of crisis of capitalism was emerging. In my opinion, this course four courses regard the economy, not in the third course. This course is a rest on society, social development, life, and the organization of life. A course which commences the evaluation of capitalism, Marxism, and the opinion of Rosa Luxemburg. It's a course what is again a monopoly economy. It's a course will protect the existence of communities in so much that it's a course to pay attention to the ecology to the utmost. It is a course that will find solutions to social experiment and economic problems in the region. In economics, we read about the ideas of capitalism and Marxism. We read ideas produced by people from Western countries. There are many different theories from which approach a region, but none of them have produced any positive results by the people of these regions. We take this course from our main principle in all countries of Rojava are developing our economic project along the lines of thought, mainly from anarchism, ideas of Abdullah Ocalan. We are meeting with people from all social backgrounds and walks of life. Therefore, the economy we want to create will be a social economy. For this reason, we are starting with cooperatives. We are starting with small units of production. We develop an economy based on agriculture, such as that aim to change the economy model in Syria will develop their projects and consider interests of all the people of Syria. We will begin finding solution for unemployment. We will find these in developing and thinking around production will support by the land. Because of our economic model, this model takes based on production based on the land and animal husbandry. We attempt to include regional capital investors in this process. We will not allow them the opportunity to exploit the community and people monopolize. This is an agricultural counter. For that reason, we solve the problem of our farmers and contribute to the diversification of their production. We will build small production units, for example, we can work on the region olive production and try to move forward small-scale industrialization in our region, which all olive products will be accessed. In the end of the day, Rojava is an anarchist society leaning towards anarcho-communism. They already abolished private property and they're aiming for the abolition of money because they don't want to produce money. And they're against the state because it's based non-hierarchically decentralized. So it is, by anarchist standards, right, a stateless, classless, moneyless society. And closer leading to the anarcho-communist goal developed as far back as pre-Cocan and far back the first hunter-gatherers like the San people. We must live and defend the revolution. And Rojava is an anarchist society, despite what critics, including anarchists themselves in the first world countries, might suggest.